12 days to the polls. How is the atmosphere right now? How is the electoral preparedness? How is the synergy amongst the agencies to not only ensure a free, fair, and credible election, but also to ensure that there is peace before, during, and after the general election? My name is Vincent Kerosi, inviting you to the culmination of our Civic Wednesday tonight, joined in studio by two gentlemen, one Mule Musau on my far right, the National Coordinator Election Observers Group, ELOG, and of course Rev Canon Kenyanjui from the General Secretary, National Council of Churches of Kenya, NCCK. Welcome, gentlemen. We also expected to have one Irene Wanyoike, the former vice chairperson of the NCIC, but because of unavoidable circumstances, she wasn't able to make here tonight. You can join this conversation on Twitter, Kirk TV Kenya, on Facebook, Kirk TV Kenya, or SMS us on our SMS number 0111 222 004 0111 222 and we will be able to also sample some of your views at the tail end of this conversation. Once again, welcome, gentlemen, and I would like to begin with a general question, which I believe the two of you will have an opportunity to weigh in. What is the general atmosphere, the political atmosphere right now compared to what we had at this particular time in 2017? To begin with, Canon.
Good, thank you very much. Good evening, viewers. As we have just 12 days between now and the next elections, it's good for us to start talking about what to expect, and of course Kenyans have huge, high expectations that the elections are going to be free and fair. Compared to 2017, I can say that we have an IEBC that is perhaps much more prepared than the previous IEBC. We know the last IEBC was formed just a few months before the elections. Mm-hmm. This one has been there for 5 years. Except that there were 3 commissioners, at least there was a commission. The staff that are organizing these elections were there, including the CEO. So the expectation is that they have prepared. And then secondly, also, we have seen the primaries went without much disturbances and disruptions, quite a bit peaceful. And again, we have also seen the preparedness of the other agencies are quite in order. Mm-hmm. So in our expectation, we do have prospects of fairly peaceful and stable, peaceful elections and transition. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, compared to 2017, Mr. Mule, of course, being for that time, following and doing it until now again at the ELOG, what is your comparison then and right now pertaining the preparedness of the IEBC?
Like Canon has said, and by the way, you should know that also Canon sits as my advisor in ELOG. Wow, awesome. He's in the advisory peace panel, our political organ. Compared to 2017, we can say with a lot of surety and based on facts that the environment leading to this election is much more stable than it was in 2017. And there are a number of statistics which are out there. Canon has talked about the political parties. What we had in 2017 was basically shambolic party nomination processes, which created an appetite for conflict as we walk towards the main elections. This time it was a much more controlled affair. Parties came up with different mechanisms in which they could be able to choose their candidates. And therefore we never had a lot of conflicts or contests coming through from that. So there was no spillover of issues from the party nominations. We have seen also an environment, a campaign period, for instance. If you've noticed, there have been very low-key campaigns.
Compared to 2017?
Yeah, exactly. We have a lot of media engagements. We have had these candidates coming out strongly, but in 2017 there was much more, especially in terms of violence, in terms of conflicts, intimidation in the field. This is based on the observation that we are conducting. ELOG has 290 observers since January who've been reporting on incidences. the incident level is very low. However, where we see issues emerging is much more on social media rather than the physical spaces. So in social media, there's a lot of escalation, we have a lot of misinformation, we have hate speech, we have fake news. That is where I think most of the energy is going. But if you look at the campaigns, yes, there are sporadic, spontaneous activities in different parts of the country, but not the scale that we had in 2017. So as just like Canon said, this is a much more, it's a better environment. As we, in the 12 days, with 12 days remaining, there's a hope that is much more a stabler environment than what we had in 2017. Although, of course, we do have one of the most hotly contested elections over a period of time. So this one there's a lot of contestation, it's very heavy, it's very close, but I think the variables indicate that it's much more stable as we go to the elections.
Yeah. What about the political rhetorics around, that are coming from, emanating from the contenders, especially the top two, compared to 2017 when we had the Jubilee and NASA? Then, of course, talk about Raila Odinga and Uhuru, but now it's Raila Odinga again against William Ruto. What about the political rhetorics? Is it, as Mr. Musau said, a little bit, low key? What do you take of 2017 rhetorics and now?
I think there is this election is very different from previous elections. For starters, this election is the closest we have come to having an issue-based election. We have seen in this country a lot of political mobilization is based on ethnic groups. But this time round, there's a bit of a shift. You can say there's a suppression of the ethnic card. It is there. It is actually the foundation. But there are more economic issues that are being brought on board in terms of the way the political formations are speaking. There's an appeal to the young people. There's an appeal to women. There's an appeal to economic classes, especially of the people who are marginalized, which I think is a good thing. I think it's also an election where we have a situation where the rhetoric is for two people who are very closely associated with the state. I'm saying that because the former Prime Minister, although he is not a member of this government, the Jubilee government, he is closely associated with it after the handshake with the president. And therefore he is seen to have some level of incumbency. On the other hand, the deputy president is still the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. So he is an incumbent, so to speak. And therefore it is presenting a very unique situation in this election. And that I think is also changing the discourse, because before someone would say, I'm getting into government. But the two candidates are actually in government. But they are speaking as if they are not in government, which is causing a bit of confusion among the political class and also among the population. But I think it's also the third point is that if you look at the whole of the African continent, I think Kenya has made very good and significant steps in terms of nurturing a democracy and vibrancy where the vote counts. And that is where you see a lot of campaigns, because if the people of Kenya never had a vote in their pocket, then nobody will come campaigning and asking for your vote. And I think the fact that now you have all the candidates, which I think is the fourth main issue. Each candidate has supporters across the entire 47 counties, especially the top 10, the top two candidates. And even the other candidates, you can feel that it is not, you can't say this is my strongholds. Yeah. it's across the board, and that helps us to actually move away from the ethnic-based politics to where people sell their policies and ideas.
Policies. But so, you and the organization, you are very key, around the preparations of this election, because you're observing and following what is happening. We've seen in the last few days, actually, most importantly, see around the IBC what is happening, talk about the 3 Venezuelans and the issue relating to that. Do you think the IBC is, building confidence in Kenyans towards just a few days to the polls, what is happening around the IBC, the communication and all that? Is it good enough to build confidence in Kenyans that we are going to have credible elections, free and fair?
I think what happened in the last few days is unfortunate. And I'm saying unfortunate because if you look at the opinion polls over the last opinion polls, Infotrack, I think TIFA, they gave very good figures in terms of confidence levels in the IBC. Yeah. They were actually growing, over 50%. I think it's taken a very long time for the IBC to be able to get 50% confidence, ratings. Yeah. And therefore it's been growing. And that's the reason why I'm saying what happened just recently is unfortunate, because it could, create an impression of a commission which is perhaps not confident in what it is doing. But I think this is far from it, because in my view and from what we've been able to gather, this was basically an administrative issue. It never ever needed to go to the public domain. It is an issue that IBC can be able to sort out, the DCI, the police. The police do their job at the airport to ensure that we don't get, we apprehend any negative things or any things which may affect our security and other issues. If they did their investigations, our humble view is that we should, these agencies have back channels that they can be able to use. Yeah. If the police have a particular problem, they can be able to call the commission, they can be able to speak to each other in a manner which is following protocol and in a manner that does not create despondency on the public, on the part of the public. Don't want to create tensions in the public. So I think it was badly managed, in my view. It could have been handled in a much more different way. This is an administrative issue. There's something that they say, in Swahili we say, ukiona alacho kuku huwezi kumla. You don't go to the details. Because there's always, as they say, okay, I can't say this in a Christian station. I was going to say, but that is, because it's very un-Christian, I'll not say that. Yeah. Let me say this. It is important that we allow, there are things that IBC must do to put its house in order. And we got an explanation today when we met the commission, where they said they have an undertaking with Smartmatic, the company, which is obligated to look for a local partner to undertake some of the things, some of the work that they've been contracted to do. So this other company had contracted somebody to come up with the stickers. The stickers are basically to label the machines to go to the different parts of the country. Now, that is an issue, is part of the contract obligation of Smartmatic and its attendant local partner. And they were handling it, and it was around the arrangement to come with some of those materials. Now, so and IBC says that he actually went to the airport. The CEO was called by the police to go to the airport to explain. They explained and everything went okay. Now it is, things were escalated at some point until they got to the media. And that is where I'm saying we don't never need to get to that. So whatever the reasons that we found ourselves going to the public domain, having exchanges of what I would call a purely administrative issue or a logistical issue which was being undertaken by IBC and its vendors, is what I'm calling unfortunate. It shouldn't have gotten to that level. And that would affect, therefore, Kenyans thinking about whether we are prepared or not. We've gotten assurances from the Commission in that meeting that they are ready for the elections. They have been preparing for the elections. Ballot papers came today. More ballot papers came today. There are still more along the way. They are preparing their field polling officials. So I think some of these issues need to be handled with some level of caution so that we don't create fear in the community or in the society that we are not very clear. So it's a handling. But I think, it's a handling issue. But I think it's something that I'm very sure is going to be sorted out very soon, and sorted in a manner that we don't have to be afraid of the plans that are in place to ensure there's a credible election.
Well, I'll come back to you to talk about the synergy now, how the agencies should work together, the IBC, talk about the DCI, the judiciary, and even the communication authorities, so that because these agencies that are geared towards giving us that credible election. But before that, in a statement that NCCK released a couple of days ago, I think sometime last week, there is a pointer here to the IBC, message to the IBC, and this is part of, I'll paraphrase what the NCCK said. You have been preparing for this for the last 5 years, and we are sure you have put everything in place. We only urge you to upgrade the level of public communication so as to regularly update Kenyans on the preparations and assure them of the readiness for the elections. As a constitutional election management sacred body, you must be seen not to be impartial and transparent. This is a communication that you give to the IBC. Do you think and feel that they are doing exactly what you as a council would like to see from such a body that's handling the elections?
Yes, we did issue that statement last week, and we issued even another one on Monday, responding to the DCI IBC issue. And our own assessment from our own observation is that IBC has done a good job. And they are doing it, the logistics and preparation. And we have had several sittings where they assure us of the preparations. We felt that there is a weakness in the strategic and public communication on the IBC side. Why we say that is that elections generally in this country have suffered a trust deficit, where there is trust issues between IBC and the candidates, and sometimes Kenyans themselves, to the extent that people have questioned. In 2017, there was the question of credibility of the IBC, which led to the disbandment of the IBC then, and the one that is led by Chebukati being formed. So we have trust issues. So trust issues, just like my colleague Mule has said, there are methods of building confidence and building public trust. One of them is effective communication. We have been urging IBC to keep on communicating. And we are even asking them to borrow a brief from the Minister for the CS for Health, Honorable Kagwe. And during the COVID crisis, he kept communicating daily, releasing the details. It looks mundane and routine, but it is very critical for confidence building, so that every day people hear from the authorities what is the level of preparedness. And then through the media, the journalists and the Kenyans can be able to ask the questions to the IBC as the duty bearers to say the issues that are there. Let me give you an example. There are 32 cases that are pending in court that may determine the kind of the candidates who are going to run for the next election. They need to be updated. I think this is where it will be possible for IBC to come out and tell the public we have 32 cases in court, and also to perhaps in the same press conference bring someone from the judiciary, the spokesperson of the judiciary, to say what the judiciary is doing. So what we are asking is that we have regular updates, and especially for the remaining 12 days, I think it will serve the country a lot of justice and the public to actually upgrade and improve on their public communication.
Sure. Let me come to you, Bwana Mule, and talk about now how are these agencies working together, because we seem to see sort of a tussle between the organization and the agencies that should be working in tandem to ensure that in August 8th, Kenyans have what they believe is credible, free, and fair elections. Talk about the DCI, talk about the IEBC, the judiciary, and the communication authority. There seems to be every person in these institutions are pulling on their sides. What do you think is going to be the implication of these? In the just 12 weeks, 12 days down to the elections.
There's something called the Pontius Pilate moment. When Pontius Pilate decides he's washing his hands and says, "It's not on me." Mm-hmm. I think for me that is the fear in terms of how these bodies and agencies are coordinating. Mm-hmm. Everybody is washing their hands and says, well, me, I'm done my part. Mm-hmm. IBC is the one organization or institution which is mandated to run elections in this country. Mm-hmm. However, they cannot work alone. They have to work with others. Yeah. It must be a concert of different entities. Mm-hmm. We have, on matters to do with security, the police must provide security. Yeah. They have an arrangement. They deployed still launched a plan earlier in the year, a joint plan. Yeah. Police will be seconded to IBC to be able to provide support to the security aspects of it. We have the communications authority that you talked about. IBC will be transmitting results from different polling stations using an infrastructure, a network that is supported by the ICT ministry and overseen by the ICT ministry and the CA. Yeah. We have the judiciary from whatever disputes are emerging from the electoral environment will arbitrate and ensure that they are concluded within reasonable time to ensure that there's a free process, there's justice in terms of the electoral process. Yeah. So all these actors must act in concert. So where there is no, we start seeing this junction in terms of how they are dealing with each other, it will affect the electoral process. And that's so what they're supposed to be doing. Each of them has mandate, which is very clear in terms of their TORs given by the constitution, given by the laws. They all need to prepare. Now, I'll give you an example of one of the institutions which has worked very well over the years. It may have problems right now, but you can see at least what it portended, the judiciary. In 2013, when under Chief Justice Emeritus Willie Mutunga, they set up what they called a Judicial Working Committee on Elections. It later became a substantive committee, became the Judicial Committee on Elections. It is that committee, over the years, and even in my engagements with that committee, then under the leadership of David Maraga, remember, he was the first chair, and they would admit to us, we know nothing about elections. We are legal people. We know legalese. Yeah. We do not know this is a political process. So we need to understand it to know how to support the commission. And it's because of that that if you can see the judiciary has grown in stature over a period where it has been able to undertake its responsibilities much more efficiently than it was doing before. It even had the capacity and the confidence to nullify an election that they considered was not done properly. That is an institution which grew into understanding its role, and you've seen from 2017 up to now that has been very bold. Granted, as Canon has said, there are some still issues which must come out much more clearly. We have seen inconsistencies in some of the rulings, in how much time and what they portend for the electoral calendar, but those are things we can deal with. So if the police were doing something similar, if the CA was doing something similar, appreciating their role and therefore supporting the commission in the conduct of this exercise, then we'll see, and this protocol, as I say, it's not that there's absence of protocol in terms of support. Even Parliament, which was supposed to support the IBC in terms of funding and in terms of ensuring that laws are passed in good time, was also misbehaving. So where the behavior of these agencies tend to be in conflict with each other, then we'll have a reason to be concerned. But they ought to be above board. They need to support the IBC. 12 days of the election, anybody who needs to to lend their hand, and this is provided by law, it's not something that they are doing it under a privilege. They need to support IBC to be able to conduct this election and be able to deliver the elections for the country. So the infrastructure is there. It's the behavior that we need to address. Why are they behaving in a manner that does not seem to support the process?
Canon, do you believe there's time to do that? Because we're just a few days to the elections. Do you have time to ensure that now there is that, conscientiousness to work together, that is a spirit of working together to deliver a credible election for the Mwananchi?
I think if you read our statement, we address that. We address the issue of elections. That elections are such an important function that it cannot be left to one organ or one organization. And there is time. 12 days is a long time. And this is a message that we have been sending to all the ministries and departments and agencies of the government. Not every country has an IEBC. Even Kenya didn't have an election management body. It was civil servants that used to carry out elections. We have observed elections in other countries where there is no election body. And it is the public and the civil servants who carry out that duty. So this is the fact that we establish an independent electoral and boundaries commission doesn't mean that they are independent of working with others. And we have repeated this message to IEBC that elections are delivered through a multi-agency approach. And 12 days are enough for us to correct that, because it takes two to tango. IEBC must accept that they can't carry out their mandate without the police, without the judiciary, without the CA, without all the other agencies, including the provincial administration. And you know, even for example, if you take the police, I know there has been a tug of war between the police and the IEBC about who will have the command. There will be Kenya during the day of election. If there is a crisis, if there is a terror attack or some other thing, and God forbid, the police are there to provide security to Kenya. So the mandate of the police cannot be taken by IEBC. Just like the police, the National Police Commission cannot take the mandate of IEBC. There is the spirit of interdependency. And I think that is something that we need to train ourselves, to change our culture, so that when we have a mandate, it doesn't become our mandate. It's the mandate of the people of Kenya for IEBC to oversee elections. And Kenyans can decide, we don't need IEBC. Yeah? Or they can remove these commissioners that are on board. They did that in 2017. So 12 days are enough. What we are urging all the ministries and departments and agencies in Kenya, these elections cannot be left to IEBC alone or any other organ or state department. We all must work together. Kenya belongs to all of us, and Kenya belongs to the people of Kenya. And these elections are being run with taxpayers' money. And therefore, it behooves all of us to support this process, so that then we get the new leadership. And after that, we continue with life, because Kenya is bigger than any one of us. That's the spirit that we should have. Whether we are independent or autonomous or not, we are not independent from the Constitution, and we are not independent from the people of Kenya, who are the owners of this process. Thank you.
I want us to take it a little bit forward now and look at the roles that the representatives of the different bodies that you are here to represent the church, of course, and you represent the civil society. What is the role of the civil society in all this, as much as we want to look at these dedicated bodies and organs that deal with this? What the role of the civil society in this, now that you are from ELOG?
The civil society has a number of roles. Number one is that we are observers. ELOG is an observation platform. It brings together 18 civil society organizations for the purposes of observing the electoral process. And the observation means you go out there and systematically collect information on this election process and be able to form an opinion in terms of the credibility of the process, the free and fairness of the process, the peacefulness of the process. So you want to ensure that you want to qualify whether we have done an election which is compliant with the law, which has followed the regulations which have been set forth by the Kenyans, and which also meets Kenyans' expectations. Mm-hmm. So that's one role. The civil society also has a role in terms of advocacy. There are issues which are going to be picked up. There are issues which are also currently being brought into the limelight. So we have civil society organizations which are picking up these issues, where voter education, where there are gaps, then they are able to bring those into the limelight, that it is addressed by the respective agencies. And then you also have the role of educating the public. We have civil society organizations, and especially the churches where Canon sits, which are leading in terms of ensuring that the people are aware of their roles, aware of their rights, aware of their need to participate and participate effectively in the electoral process by provision of education, information, by also amplifying peace messaging so that people can be able to understand their role in terms of ensuring that we have a peaceful process. So these are the main roles that the civil society has, and of course also working in concert with IEBC, because there are those who also offer technical support. There are those who have experts who can be able to offer certain supports. We have the research based civil society, which provides even more information in terms of the landscape, or what we would call political economy analysis, so that we understand the landscape that we are operating in. So all these roles serve to make a contribution to the election process.
I'm interested in education because I don't know if I'm the only one who's seeing this. I don't know if the IEBC is doing enough to educate the electorate on matters elections, especially now that we are almost there. I haven't seen those adverts that they used to, throw on our televisions, radios, sensitizing the public on matters elections and the importance and how to vote and all that. Are you from where you seated as a civil society organization? Are you feeling the same? Are you seeing that the IBC and of course in tandem working together with the organizations, are you doing enough to educate the public on matters election?
We've not had as robust a voter education process as we've had before in this election season. And when by election season I mean, the election season starts like about a year to the elections. Yeah. We had a mass voter registration process. We had a political party nomination process. We've had the campaign period, and now we come into the election. Yeah. So you would expect that in most of the pockets of in that season, that there was a robust campaign to educate the voters. We have seen a much more low-key affair, and part of the reason is twofold. One is actually one in terms of funding. IBC in the earlier part had not gotten money to be able to do a robust voter education process. But also the civil society, including the religious organizations, some of them who depend on money which comes from well-wishers, we never had as robust a fundraising environment as we had before, because there was also what was being called a note verbal from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which stopped donors from supporting very many civil society organizations in respect to the voter education. Granted, IEBC did receive money, I think, in the early part again of this year, and part of that money was to go to the voter education process, which I think they have started in the last 2 weeks much more robustly. Now we are starting to see the messages going around, but I don't think we are yet to the level in 2017 where we had a very active civil society which was well funded to be able to go around the country supporting and complementing the work that IEBC is doing, as well as the other actors in the process. So one of the areas where we have suffered a little bit is the question of adequate voter education to the voters out there and in all parts of the country. And even much more important for us, targeted voter education. You know, you don't want to give voter education, just blanket voter education. There are people that need to be targeted. Younger people, the special interest groups, women, PWDs, we may need to target them in order for them to be able to appreciate their involvement in the process, because usually those are the ones with lower numbers when it comes to participation in elections. So those are some of the issues that we have seen so far.
We are due for a short break, but before then, Canon, what is the role of the church in all this? Now that apart from, you know, advising and, you know, trying to give that play the advisory role to the IBC and all other agencies, what is the church doing to ensure that the public is sensitized and knows that elections will come and this is how they're going to be conducted, and then after we still need to remain together as a country?
Yes, over the years the church has played a very key role in terms of civic education, basically educating people on their rights. For decades, especially when there was a one-party state, the church was one of the most vocal agencies in saying that we need pluralism, we need multi-party, and how multi-party works. And we did a lot of civic education basically to help people understand that Kenyans have rights, what we call the Wanjiko rights. Having said that, there's also a spiritual angle to this, because what we teach people in church is that every human being has human dignity, which is God-given, and no one can take it away from you. You have life, you have dignity, you should be able to speak, you should be able to express yourself, you're entitled to have a just government so that there's no oppression on the land. And that actually, if you look at the book of Luke and the mission that Christ came to have, to release the oppressed from oppression, to give sight to those who are blind. Basically, that is the role that the church have, because in the operation of life, there's the spiritual side, there's the political side, there's the economic side, and that is the role that the church has been playing. During elections, we have also been doing a lot of observation. Actually, it's only the church that can be able to have an observer, or at least 2 or 3 observers in every polling station. There are about 46 or so thousand polling stations across the country, and the churches are many. Even the local churches, they are very many. So that is the capacity that the church has. So we want to make sure that in future, and even now, we actually have that capacity, so that we can be able to say the church has observed this election and it is free and it is fair. Because that way, then people have confidence in the election. But we are also praying a lot for the organs of the government that handling the election. They have their human capacities, but we also believe that God also has a role in this election.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. We'll come back and talk about the challenges of flocking. You know, your flock, shepherding your flock. In that now they are all from different political divides, but you have to make sure that they still remain in church and see the brotherhood and sisterhood in all this. But we are taking a short break. We are coming back to talk about more in studio. We are with Mule Musau, the national coordinator, ILOG, and of course Reverend Canon Kinyanjui, the General Secretary of National Council of Churches of Kenya, NCCK. Continue engaging with us on our social media, Twitter and Facebook, Active Kenya, and of course through our SMS number 0111 220044, and we'll be able to look at your SMSs and views just as we continue this conversation. Don't go away, we are coming back.
health, mental, physical, and of course, spiritual.
Nitakuwa na biashara nawe tangu macheo hadi machweo.
As we put every matter into context, together we build a lawful nation.
Remember, family is not only important, it's everything.
I support Kirk TV. Tujenge Kirk TV.
Five people, 5 things for Kirk TV. This partnership week, we urge you, our viewer, to set aside 5 minutes to do the following. Ask 5 people to pray for Kirk TV, request 5 people to tell 5 people about Kirk TV, encourage 5 new people to watch our amazing programs, ask 5 people to partner with Kirk TV for whatever amount and make a monthly commitment, and guide 5 people to like, follow and subscribe on Kirk TV social media pages. 5 minutes, 5 people, 5 things for Kirk TV. Pamoja
tujenge Kirk TV.
Points as to why we need partners. Number one, it is because partnership and partnering is biblical. That is the model of mission which is demonstrated in the Bible. That even Jesus Christ had to partner with the 12, and then he commissioned them so that they may partner with the rest of the world. That is point number one. Point number two is so that you become part of this great mission. So we partner so that we become part of the mission. Without partnering, you cannot be part of the mission. One of the values in the Presbyterian Church of East Africa is that nobody in the mission should be a spectator. Come so that you become part of us, we do mission together. How do you do it? Become a partner of Kirk TV. Number three, we partner so that you may tap the blessings of the mission. So once you partner, as we continue to evangelize, we reach those people who are unreached, you become or you tap part of the blessings you get through partnership. And that is very important for everybody to come so that we can join together as we tap the blessings of doing mission together. Finally, it is because we need to expand together. Kirk TV is expanding. Kirk TV is growing, and that is why we see the viewership growing every day. So partner with us so that we can expand together.
To partner with us, send your financial support to pay bill number 4019613, account partner. Pay bill number 4019613, account partner.
We thank God for Kirk TV, which has helped us reach many people, not only in this area, but around Kenya and beyond Kenya. And it's our prayer that God will use it as an instrument that will spread out the good news all over as people interact and as people worship, that it will be a means through which the Bible knowledge will be spread, evangelism, and the people talking to people. We pray that God would use it, and we are asking as many people to get involved in contributing for the welfare of the Kirk TV, so that we can be able to carry on the good work, because it's just like a born child who must be nurtured and cared for and brought up, so that from infancy to maturity and to be able to serve.
I support Kirk TV. Tujenge Kirk TV.
To partner with us, send your financial support to pay bill number 4019613, account partner. Pay bill number 4019613, account partner.
Thursday, join me, Chris Sambo, as we talk on matters to do with law, justice, and legal affairs. From family laws, commercial laws, and copyright laws, we shall put the legal perspective. Together, we build a lawful nation.
Thank you for staying with us. Welcome back. This is Civic One Wednesday evening talk that we are having here in studio is Mr. Musau Mule, the National Coordinator of ILOG, and of course Reverend Kenon Kinyanjui from the NCCK. He is the General Secretary. I was with you before we went to the break talking about what the role the church is playing in all this. But again, I'm looking at the fact that you have to shepherd a flock that is divided politically, but you have to make, even these politicians are also part of your flock. How big or small a challenge is this for you as a church to ensure that you remain impartial and neutral as much as possible, but you have all these people in charge?
I think it's the church that changed the narrative. The narrative in Kenya, the independence, was that people needed to belong to the same political opinion for there to be unity in the country. And that is how we saw that although we started with many parties, at some point we were a de facto one-party state when KADU joined KANU. Yeah. And the church played a key role to bring back the plurality of opinion, so that people can hold different political opinion. But having said that, when more political parties formed, there was then the risk of political parties being formed along ethnic lines, which happened, and every tribe had their own small party here and there. But I think we have gone full circle. Now people have seen that there's no ethnic group or a combination of them that can form a government. And for example, Jubilee was accused of being a combination of two tribes. And that became a risk even for the country. So in terms of the church has been educating, and it takes time for a nation to be nurtured so that even within a family, the father can be in one political party, the mother can be in another political party. This is a cultural issue, and it's a philosophical issue, and a theological issue, and a sociological issue that develops over time. So that as we mature, then we'll allow people to hold different opinion. A family of 5 people, they can all vote for 5 different presidential candidates. And they come home and still continue with life. But that's maturity. We haven't reached there yet. And therefore, even in church, and that is what we have been urging pastors, as you stand in front of the church, and you need to realize that the people in front of you have their own dignity, they have capacity to hold a political opinion. It's a God-given right, and therefore, don't shepherd them towards this party or the other party. That role is theirs. What you're supposed to do, and that is what we have been saying and doing, educate them. Let them understand. These political candidates, what do they stand for? These political parties, what are their manifesto? And that is why we have been organizing all these forums, to educate the people on the manifestos of different political parties, and also for the people to give their own manifesto. Because also people are the ones who know what they want.
Yeah.
To give them their own manifestos to the politicians and tell them, this is what we want, the leadership that we want to hold. It's not the duty of a pastor to tell the congregation who they are going to vote for. The pastor should not support or oppose a candidate. They should be impartial. They themselves, of course, they will vote for their preferred candidate. But even their own wives and their own mature children who have voters card have freedom to elect a person of their choice. That is the vision that the church had when we pushed for multi-party. And we believe that we are going to reach there at some point in the future. And we see this election as a very key election to actually coming to that level of understanding that Kenyans, as it is written in Article 1 of the Constitution, are the ones with the sovereignty. Sovereignty does not reside in government. Sovereignty does not reside, is not vested in the state. Sovereignty is not in the church. Sovereignty is within the people of Kenya. And the people of Kenya can therefore elect their leader based on free and universal suffrage in a free and fair election. And that is why IEBC becomes a very key thing, that IEBC must be a midwife that is fair, that is impartial, that is competent, so that then the results are trusted and are acceptable to the people.
Yeah. How far are we from reaching the levels that Canon is alluding to? If we can compare where we were 10 years ago, 5 years ago in 2017, and now, how far are we from reaching to the levels that we can say now we can, confidently stand and say, I am for this, I stand for this, I support this, and we still remain to be brothers and sisters at the end of the day?
Democracy is a going concern, and democracy is something that is going to be, is work in progress everywhere in the world. Countries like the US have had more than 200 years of independence and democratic rule, and we're still having issues. You saw during the reign of Trump how easy it was to be able to bring racial factors into play. So if the US, which has gone over 200 years, is still yet to get to a level where you can be able to say this is a free-for-all thing, it's about getting the best minds, it's about everybody choosing who the best candidate is. If it is still grappling with racial issues, it tells you that we are some distance away, but we have made some very good strides. Of course, Africa has benefited from some civilized order which has been there globally. People who made earlier steps, the Western world and other parts of the world had made their own progress. And therefore we were coming into play at a time where there was a lot of civility around. And therefore we are moving a little bit faster than some of them. So from that perspective, then I think we've made some great strides. Where we are right now, we can talk about, Canon earlier talked about the fact this election is the first election that we are starting to see issue-based politics. One, they are all talking about economics, whether it is a trickle-down effect in terms of economy or bottom-up or whatever. Even Wajakoya and his own radical ideas, they are talking about issues. They are presenting propositions to the country which are being picked up for debate and for discussion. And therefore we are moving inches into new terrain. So I think it's a matter of time. We find ourselves in an environment where there is much more a much more egalitarian society. There is freedoms, there is equality. It's much more about each ensuring there is an enterprise in the country that satisfies the expectations of the people. That is where we are moving towards. And Kenya, again, I want to agree with Canon in an earlier statement where you said this is one country. If you walk around Africa, if you go to very many capitals in Africa, we've made great strides. Sometimes we look down upon ourselves, but we've made serious strides. Which country in Africa has people debating in front of presidential candidates debating in front of the populace, members of county assembly or governors who are being put on TV, there is scrutiny, a microscope of a TV to articulate their agenda to the people, and they have citizens waiting for them, and afterwards they shake hands and they move on with their lives. We have made some great strides. So I think we are moving to new terrain. There are great strides. We are not yet there. We're still talking about, like again Canon said, we are still, most of our politics is still underpinned around tribal element, but I think we're getting over it. And just to cap it up, I was in a conference with Canon, the National Election Conference, and I was reminding him in another forum where even someone like Wajakoya, for instance, who has what would call some radical propositions, the religious leaders were happily having a chat with him. You'd have expected, oh, this Wajakoya, oh, the kind of ideas as he has, maybe they are anti-church, they are anti-Christian, but they had very beautiful and very good conversations with him. That is a picture you want to see, so that you come with your proposals. We'll deal with you at the ballot box. Well, the people who want to support your ideas will support your ideas. So, and with devolution, there is also a level to which we have also been able to cut some of these issues into issue-based, because now at the county level we are asking ourselves, what is in it for us? It's not about the individual who is coming through, but in terms of what economic ideas, what social ideas, and what political ideas do you have that can be able to propel us in the next level? I think we're getting there.
We are getting there. And talking about tolerance and coexistence, I wanted to look at a report released by the NCIC, say a couple of months ago, May 31st to be precise, on the conflict hotspot mapping for Kenya. Kenya's vulnerability to electoral violence is at 53.4%, and the regions that have been mapped out here as having that high risk, to electoral violence is Nairobi, Nakuru, Kericho, Kisumu, Uasin Gishu, Mombasa, who are at 71% and above. And of course, we have the medium 10 counties: Narok, Marsabit, Laikipia, Lam, Baringo, Isiolo, Meru, Nandi, Samburu, and Bomet. And the remaining 21 are in between medium and low risk. Of course, that's Tharaka Nithi, Kitui, Kajiado, Embu, Nyandarua, Makueni, Busia, Taita, Taveta. Talking about coexistence and tolerance, these are regions that have been mapped out by the NCSC. Sorry, they're not here today. We expect them, but they're not here today. Looking at this and talking about we are at least at a level. In 2017, we had such a report again, classifying these regions as high-risk areas, if at all electoral violence was something that we could be, afraid about. How then can we say that we moved the level, yet these regions still remain under microscope of possible electoral violence, Kenan?
Well,
is it that we have taken too long to learn lessons?
I think taking it from where Mule left it, there are certain conditions precedent to a vibrant democracy. One of them is the size of the middle class. Because let's take, for example, the democracy of Nairobi. The demographics of Nairobi are such that about 60, almost 70% of the people living in Nairobi live in the slums or live in informal settlement, so to speak. And then they are the majority in the voters register for the city of Nairobi. So the issues that they look at and the issues that they seek, even when, for example, you have a presidential debate, is very different than when you have a similar debate, say, in a place like Nyandarua, or a place like, say, Kiambu, or Murang'a. You will find that the economic status of the people of Murang'a is almost the same. There are not very many very rich people, and there are also not very many poor people. there's a bit of a moderation. But when you have poor people who are struggling to pay rent, they are struggling to get a job, they are struggling to educate their children, they are struggling to get access to health, they are struggling with HIV and AIDS burden, you cannot expect that kind of a voter to be able to exercise all their rights, democratic rights, in terms of debating and asking about the policy. And that is where now you see the issue of hurdles. So that if today I give you a packet of unga, tomorrow I bring you a blanket, the following day I bring a leso, the following day I give you a soda, then that becomes the incentive to vote for me, rather than what I'm going to do. So the capacity of you now as a voter who has been treated in that manner to hold the leadership to account becomes very low. Countries that have thriving democracies have a bigger and larger middle class. People who have, there is also lesser inequality between the rich and the poor. Kenya has one of the highest inequalities. And that explains why you find homes like, for example, where we are, we have dogs, we have an electric fence, we have a fence, we have gates with doors and bolts, and even our houses have grills, and they have alarms, and they have cameras, and we have a watchman, and we have a police number which we can call. And in spite of all that, there is still
break-ins.
There is still insecurity. So what I'm saying is that, and this is where we go back to the Bible. Bible talks about peace, shalom, the fullness of having. It's not just about absence of war, but also having food, having health, and having a better housing, having dignity. That is the intention of God. And until the dignity of the Kenyan is lifted without leaving people behind, then we can't experience true democracy, where everyone is equal and where everybody is equal even before the law. So it's a work in progress, but there are many factors that needs to be put in place. That is why it's important for the state, whoever wins this election, to work towards, for example, creation of jobs. So that then, our research shows that young people, once they graduate, they are taking up to 7 years before they get a job. So that is causing a lot of despondency and disillusionment. And therefore, even young people, you listen to them, they say, I'm not going to vote because is voting going to give me a job? Is voting going to give me bread? Is voting going to help my wife live a better life? They want to see the connection between the politics and the economic or situations that they are having right now. So it's a journey, but we are headed in the right direction. The indicators for Kenya are good. I think what we need is a leadership that lifts the people and takes them 4, 5, 10 steps ahead, and the next regime comes and takes them to the next level, and then we'll become, Kenya can become better than many countries because we have everything going for us. We have the sun 24/7, 365 days. Some other countries have winter half the year, and they are developed. So if we developed ourselves, we would go very far. And that is why everyone must vote in the next election, and vote the leaders who are going to take them to that democratic reality.
Yeah, do you agree with Canon that part of these, issues that we face and the issue that lead to this high risk, kind of rating in these regions is because of poor governance and or lack of good leadership that keeps on repeating itself in a cycle during elections, and the only way out is to get good leadership. Now that you have attached with the ground as a civil society organization.
First, I totally agree with Canon in terms of how he has analyzed that. The volatility of some of these regions is based on existential, structural issues. And poverty is one of those issues that you have to look at. all the places that you've talked about are hotspots, and they've been characterized as hotspots for a very long time.
Yeah.
Nairobi, with its cosmopolitan nature, with the kind of variables that Canon was talking about having very, very poor people, very rich people. Those are structural differences, social, cultural, structural differences that that create rifts or fault lines that can easily be taken advantage of by politicians, especially when they are looking for votes or when they are contesting. Nakuru is a cosmopolitan area again. Two big communities meet in Nakuru. There are quite a number of issues. So if you go to all those places, you can again be able to extract some of those structural issues and differences which create an environment that is good fodder for conflict. Whether it is a spontaneous conflict, whether it is political conflict, whether it is criminal activities, they are created because these hotspots. There are factors which exist in these hotspots that will always basically ensure that they remain volatile. So that's a good description. That's a very graphic, in my view, a very graphic explanation of why we've been having this particular problem. But you can only sort them out, one, over time, and two, through very progressive governance frameworks which allow you to keep moving forward in terms of development, a development state, where you are looking at some of those issues. We have attempted to deal with these issues. The idea of devolution, for instance, was to try to devolve resources much more equitably. And one of the things that I think personally, some of the issues that we've been pushing for is to get to a level where the resources which are devolved at the lower level are more than the ones which are left at the center. If you look at some of the emerging economies, the ones which have employed devolution, you'll find that over 50% of the resources have been going towards the devolved levels. And that improves or creates some level of equality and equity across the country. So you may be able to address some of the problems that we're having in some of the difficult areas like Turkana, for instance, and Makueni. You've had the kind of records that they've been showing in terms of how people are starting to appreciate devolution. They are starting to see things which they are not seeing before. In places like West Pokot, where we've been having castle rustling for years, some of those issues are being addressed now that you're bringing new ideas into the fore. So I think it's a question of continuous address of the level of the kind of state that we have in the country, from the pre-colonial state to a modern state, and especially addressing issues about inequality which have not been addressed for a very long time. So yes, I agree, and I think every opportunity which is granted to us through elections in which you can be able to make decisions about getting new leadership or getting better leadership should be taken advantage of by the voters in the country, so that they can also be able to see whether that will improve their livelihoods and hence create a much more stable environment that is not does not have any potency for violence and conflicts.
Yeah. What about the bodies and agencies, that are mandated to ensure that we have a cohesive institution? Talk about the NIC and NCIC. Sorry, I know they are doing a campaign right now called Election Bill and Norma campaign. Do you think that they're doing enough to ensure that at the end of the day we still coexist and tolerate each other's, stand?
Yes. After the 2007 post-election violence, we did a survey. What were the root causes of the violence that happened in 2007? We realized that part of it was a lot of grievances that were very deep-seated among the people in terms of ethnic divisions, and also in terms of issues like land grievances, issues to deal with historical treatment of certain populations and so on. And therefore we proposed that the government creates a body that can actually, on a continuous basis, look at the nation building not from projects like the expressway and the highways that we have and airports, but from the people side. We wanted an organization that works on a day-to-day to actually bring the people together, to promote cohesion and integration. And that is how the National Cohesion and Integration Commission was created. And we are happy we have worked with them since they were formed. We have contributed a lot in terms of cohesion, but we realized that even if the church has a role, we needed a government agency to coordinate all the other agencies around that. And NCCIC is under the leadership of Reverend Kobia is doing a good job. So the role of NCIC is to coordinate, you know.
Yeah.
It's not to create cohesion, because no government agency can create cohesion. And therefore, a multi-sectoral approach is usually how they work, and we work with them. We are having all the activities that are there on the ground, basically to make sure that Kenyans are looking at election not as a divider, but more or less as something that brings them together. And then the messaging that we are pursuing through the pulpit is to preach peace, that we are brothers and sisters, and we should be our brother's keeper. And that is something that we think that NCIC is doing well as the other agencies, the police in terms of the way they handle the people, the IEBC in terms of the way they do the elections in a free and fair. That promotes cohesion when they feel that there is impartiality in the civil service, impartiality in the police, impartiality in the judiciary. They are getting justice when you go to court. And therefore, when we see the rising confidence in institutions of the state, then that is cohesion. Because I think from a religious perspective and from a Christian theological perspective, we are all aspiring to that shalom, where there is peace and prosperity. That comes when nobody asks you where you come from or what tribe you are before they give you a job. They give you a job because you qualify, not because of those elements where you come from. Thank you.
Oh, then even as we conclude, because time is actually not on our side, but even as we conclude, then who does the backstop with when it comes to ensuring that we have coexisting and tolerant society even during this election period and even after going forward? Talk about the governance that is going to bring this. Who does the backstop with at this period for Mwananchi to understand? Is it them, Mwananchi, or the government in place? Or
the backstops with Mwananchi, the backstops with me and you, the backstops with the individual. We are the ones who are Kenyans, and we want a good country, and we want to improve our livelihoods. So we must do everything in our power to ensure. And you know, when I say me and you, it means that Chebukati is an individual. Mutiambai Hillary is an individual, is a Kenyan in this country. The outgoing president is a Kenyan in this country, and the aspirants that we have are Kenyans. So if we could start with each individual in the first place, before you even assume the different robes and roles that we give you, and you take it upon yourself to say, I'm in this country and I want to improve livelihoods, then we'll start seeing very conspicuous efforts by each individual to ensure that we are moving forward. In the second instance is that you're going to be given a role. So if you're given a role as the IBC, then, and your role is to ensure that you want to conduct a credible elections, then you need to take that role, an onerous role, a very honorable responsibility which has been given to you by the people of Kenya, and you do it well. The police do their work, the judiciary do their work, the communications authority do their work, the voters do their work, because remember, the voters are only 22 million. We are talking about nearly 50 million Kenyans. These 22, and not even the entire 22, because around 70% of the turnout will give you around 17 million or something like that, or 15 million Kenyans are deciding an election, the destiny of the country in the next 5 years. For their children who are not voting, the non-voting population and anybody else who is not in the voters' roll. So if each of us takes that responsibility very seriously, then the collective decisions that we make in terms of progressive thinking will deliver us in a better situation, in a better place.
Yeah. Even speak up to you, Canon, to give us your last word. In 2018, the Archbishop of Canterbury, raised an issue and said the church can never be a political. It's political in a way, say actually going forward ahead and saying that Jesus himself involved himself in politics. Do you think the church can truly be apolitical?
We had a conference recently which was called Church and Politics, and that was one of the issues that we discussed in that conference. And looking at the entire life, the way life is, life has, you can say, about 7 elements. And religion, economics, politics, family, institutions, and aesthetics, and the arts, and there's one more that I'm forgetting. So life as a whole, from a philosophical perspective, is that there's no life without politics. Politics is how we relate with one another, the way we are talking. Ethics is how I relate with myself, and religion is how I relate with God. And therefore, every day, first, we must remind ourselves that we are born in an office, which is recognized in Article 1 of the Constitution. That the name of that office is the office of the citizen. The office of the citizen, and I don't want to go to the Greek interpretation. I'm sure you have seen what is going around of who is a citizen and the other two. I don't want to mention the other two and what they mean. But the office of the citizen, all of us are members of. And that office, you are born into it and you die in it. You're buried as citizen.
A citizen, yeah.
But that office has responsibilities. Those responsibilities are, for example, to promote cohesion, to live with one another. And therefore, because we are all born into the office of a citizen, whether we are religious or not, so Christianity as a religion has taught us how to be responsible citizens. For example, to stand up to injustice. Actually, it's a duty of every Christian to stand up to injustice, to call out injustice, and to always look to be the brother's keeper, to look for fair economic systems, fair structural systems where people are going to operate. If you close your eyes when you see oppression, then you're not a good Christian. And therefore, if you look at this Bunge, most of the people there who are politicians are Christians. And we need to help them to see their politics as part of their expression of their Christian faith. And therefore, in terms of making there to be fairness and justice. So you can't separate the two. It is only that in every country, there are frameworks that are created for the participation. And therefore, every Christians have a very big political role to play. Even the president is a Christian. And therefore, we play those roles when God calls us. And one of the other roles is to vote, to choose the leaders. Mule has said there are about 15 million people who are going to determine the next leadership. So you are lucky if you have a voter's card. It is important that you exercise that right, because you don't want to be like the man in the gospel who was given a talent and he hid it in the soil because his master was a hard man.
Yeah.
So he was punished. I think anyone who doesn't vote, there's a punishment for you, but there's also a reward if you exercise your office properly. And I think this is what God is going to ask us on the day of reckoning, on the day of judgment.
Yeah, sure.
How did you exercise your power of being a citizen?
Yes, even as we conclude, I have a couple of feedback here, and most of them are questions, and especially to you, Rev Canon. For instance, there is Frida Karani from Embu. This is actually a senatorial candidate for Embu. This is what she's saying. Would a clergy ever give themselves for an elective seat? And another question, do you think their church, fellow clergy and the church in general would support them? You know, that's about the clergy doing what? Giving themselves to an elective seat. Will you support them yourself? And what do our panelists of today have to say about Proverbs 29:2? Canon, you will help us understand Proverbs 29:2, what it brings out. There is also a question. I saw here that I thought is necessary. Why is the church playing kind of ignorance in educating members about the voters' rights as well as voting, the practice and procedures? The PCHs as a group, of course, are talking about that. That's another feedback from the viewer. There's also just feedback here. What a great civic and voter awareness education. We need to invite Mule and Canon Kenyanjui every Wednesday before and after election to panel with Kirk TV as panelists. I believe you agree with that.
We'll honor it.
That would be great. And also this is I think that is more like it. So, Canon, you have a few questions that
Yes.
maybe you like to respond to.
Yes, every Kenyan, I talked about the citizen has a right to buy and to vote. So the fact that somebody is a clergy does not take away their right to run. But Paul talks about what is beneficial. What is beneficial to the people, and especially to the church, and also in terms of your calling. So there are several pastors and bishops who have run for office. Some of them are my friends, and some have played very key role in the republic as MPs or as senators, and even some have attempted to be governors. So there's nothing wrong for a clergy to run. However, there's a calling. You have to really assess yourself and talk to your God and ask yourself, what am I called for? How can I exercise myself better? We know politics is run through very ruffian ways, especially as currently in this country. I was talking to a friend today and he was telling me that the day he hears that I'm going to become a politician, he'll know that now I have become a liar and backslidden and so on. So there's a sense in which that also have its place. The other day we had lunch with the president of Zambia, who is deeply Christian, and also the president of Malawi, who was a leader of a church. So there's nothing wrong. I think the issue is, why are you doing it? What are your motivation? And when you reach there, do you still continue to express your Christian faith in exercising the powers that your office has given you? The proverb that is referred in Proverbs 29 talks about wisdom. I think wisdom is what needs to be applied. And I think for pastors who become politicians, there is usually the public perception of a pastor and a politician being together has not matured, has not reached where they are confused. Do they treat you as a pastor or as a politician? For example, if voters want a bribe to vote for you, will you give that bribe? One bishop told me he ran, and when he called the first meeting, for us pastors, when we call for a meeting, people give us money. People come with tithes and offerings. But when you are a politician, you are the one who is giving.
Yeah, he must give us.
So that completely confused him. He was not prepared for that. So I think any clergy who wants to become a politician should attend a class on how to become a politician and how politics is played in the country. Maybe in future it will change, but currently it is very murky. And I think it will be a big challenge to keep the faith.
Yeah, sure. Because of time, there is this one in particular. I'm being told that you have to answer it. Why is the church playing kind of ignorance in educating members about the voters' rights as well as voting day practice and procedures? This is from Rev. Agol of the National Coordinator, JPRC.
Yes, Rev is chairman of JPRC of the Presbyterian Church. And if he says the church is ignorant, he is the one who is making it so. Because I think Kenyans know how to mark ballots. I think there are things that we also should not, we shouldn't assume that Kenyans are ignorant. I think Kenyans know a lot. They know how to mark a ballot for MCA. They know how to look for the signs. Of course, a refresher will be important. They know that the person they are voting for is going to lead them and is going to make certain decisions for them. So in essence, and I have been in many churches, churches are still preaching peace. They are preaching that people should go out and vote. They're even preaching that politicians who are vying should accept the results, whether they have won or lost. And if they are dissatisfied, to go to court. And I think that is the message of that of the church. So the church is playing its role, but the church is not going to tell people, vote for so-and-so, and don't vote for Muli. I think that's the question that Kenyans are asking. Our advice as NCSK is the church should not support or oppose candidates. When they come to church, pray for all of them. Don't anoint one and say this is the one that is chosen, because you'll be lying to the people and you'll be lying to God.
Definitely, and I'm sorry that question came from Sir Nixon Mburu and Dugire Kindaruma. The national coordinator of JPRC, Revagola, says what a great civic and voter awareness education. He is the one actually proposing that we invite you every Wednesday so that we, partner in this role, not only now but even after elections, which of course I'm glad you said you can honor that. I want to give you the last opportunity to give you the last word, even as we conclude, because we are already beyond the time that we had projected to conclude the discussion. But you haven't told us what Proverbs 29:2 says, because I want to go to... It's the one that
talked about wisdom.
Wisdom, that is it. So can we conclude with you, Mr. Mule, your last word on this, even as we call it an evening?
My last one is on the elections. We are 12 days to the elections. It is a very momentous occasion in this country. We'll be doing the 7th elections after since we got multi-party, and we need to exercise our rights as Kenyans to choose wisely the next leadership of this country. This country is not doing very well in terms of because of the global impact of so many things, and where we are, it is important that we make very wise decisions about who the next leader is. As Canon says, let as many people who have been enfranchised with a vote participate in this process, but also let us support the actors who are organizing and managing these elections. It is not useful to cast aspersions on IEBC right now. We need to support it. We need to work together with other agencies, including the support to the police, so that they can be able to deliver on the elections. If we do that, then we shall deliver a very credible elections come August the 9th. And once the election is over, let us accept whoever wins. I've told Reverend and a number of other religious leaders, on the Sunday which comes after the elections, there will be 14,000 losers, because we have 16,000 candidates who are gunning for these elections. They are competing for 1,882 positions, which means 14,000 of them are going to be losing. They need to wait for them, to pray for them, to ensure that they get back into the community so that they can be able to move this country together. We accept the results if they are going to be fair enough, and then we can be able to move forward in terms of nation building into the next chapter of the country.
Thank you very much. Of course, that praying for those losers is that makes part of the statement that you released the other day. So we believe that the church will do its role in ensuring that those who lose don't feel victimized, but they are also part of the great Kenya that we hope after August 9th we're going to craft going forward. Thank you very much for being with us from 7 p.m. until now. We want to call it an evening. Of course, a robust discussion that we've had here. I wish we had more time to talk and look even at your comments and feedback that we had, because a couple of them we are not able to read. But one dropped here right now by John Mbai says, NCCK General Secretary Rev. Chris Kinyanjui and the panelists, of course, Mr. Mule from ELOG. Very informative discussion there, and keep it up, and we hope to do this even more. Thank you very much for being with us. I want to call it an evening here. Thank you for being with us throughout the day. Civic Wednesday, we've talked about voter education and preparedness towards the general election that are taking place in the next 12 days. If you have a decision, you have a chance to make a choice. The choice is for you. We can only inform you. At the end of the day, you can only make the decision of the Kenya that you want, the Kenya that you desire. My name is Vincent Kirosi. Good night. See you again, God willing. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming, and we believe that we will continue doing this even not only here, but wherever we be in our platforms. Thank you very much once again. Good night. Thank you.